Jessica Nettles is from Powder Springs, Georgia. Her first novel is Children of Menlo Park. You can find her stories in Off the Beaten Path 4, Georgia Gothic, and A Woman Unbecoming. Join her online at jessicanettlesauthor.com, as well as on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Just a word about A Woman Unbecoming. It is an anthology that benefits reproductive health care rights. You can purchase it on Amazon, and it is coming out in paperback this week. I'm so excited. Also, I'm giving away one copy of it, as well as 5 of these wonderful handmade bookmarks. And now on to the reading. 2 black mounds of dirt greeted Skid and Kev at the base of their assigned mountain. They both were about knee-high, and tiny pine trees grew along the tops. "What do you think they are?" Skid kicked at the edge of one of them with his brown hunting boot. Kev took a swig from his steel flask. The wide-brimmed hat he'd bought the night before that read Hunt 40 slid to his shoulders, revealing a shock of pale red hair. "Indian mounds?" Skid thwacked his friend's temple with his finger. "There ain't no more indigenous people out here, idiot." "Yeah, that's why there's them mounds." Kev swung at his friend, lost his footing, and ended up sprawled over one of the hillocks, breaking some of the taller seedlings. "These can't be mounds. They don't look like they've been here that long." Skid picked one of the smaller pine sprigs from the second pile of packed dirt and twirled it between his long fingers. "Besides, if someone was buried, that means they can't be released to the universe like they should be." Kev's eyes widened. "Their particles would stay here. No stardust. That's some pure evil right there." Skid nodded. "Right. No stardust." He kicked a hole in the side of the mound next to him. "I reckon someone tried to start a garden right here, but didn't do a very good job." "You think they live close, like right on this mountain?" "Bobby said there were 2 old ones near here. They must be slipping if they're planting so close to the road." Skid rubbed some sweat out of his eyes. The morning was getting humid fast. Probably easy prey. "Maybe we'll get back to base before everyone else and get the best beer." Kev started up the incline, but Skid grabbed his arm. "I'm lead, remember?" He released the younger man and pulled out a machete. The edge of it gleamed from where he'd sharpened it last night by the fire. He stepped between 2 craggy granite boulders, and he swung the blade into the brush on the other side. Kev followed, but not too close. The sun was shining through the canopy of oak and pine. Behind them, leaves rustled and bells tinkled, but not loud enough for the men to hear. If they'd known the old stories and had heard the sounds, they'd have sworn there were fairies in the forest. Rhoda Lee stopped between a row of okra and white squash and leaned on her hoe. The garden was festooned in broad, prickly green leaves with splashes of golden yellow blossoms and fully open flowers of cream with a center of purple. A group of honeybees moved from the brown-red sunflowers that stood shoulder height and hovered around her like guards as a random breeze ruffled her loose graying curls hanging either side of her glasses and gave her a bit of respite from the rising midsummer heat. "Y'all go down there and check things out." The swarm headed into the tree line and vanished into the shadows. The broad green fronds of the squash and okra plants surrounding her rustled in response to the movement of the leaves in the trees and the kudzu that draped to one side of the yard. A musky, familiar stench floated in the gentle mid-morning breeze. It couldn't have been a year since their last visitors. Time moved faster than it used to. She pulled off her blue-flowered garden gloves, put the hoe over her shoulder, picked up a basket filled with okra fingers, red-green tomatoes, and a few golden-skinned squash, and made her way to the cabin. She grinned as she stepped up to the porch. "New blood. This should be fun." Hey, Kev, you see this? Adjusted the vapor rifle on his shoulder as he nibbled one of the energy bars the outfitters sold them back in town. A rough piece of thin plywood was nailed to a 2x2 stud that leaned to one side. The plywood was painted in a faded teal and adorned with flowers. It read, "Y'all don't want to do this. Leave now." Kev laughed and tore down the sign. He broke it over his wide knee and threw it to the side. "Oh, that's funny." Skid dropped the wrapper on the ground. "That really deterred us, didn't it?" The two men slung old-fashioned machetes in front of them to cut through the tangle of weeds, vines, and random branches in the hope that using a self-made path would avail them an element of surprise. Another well-preserved pole stood in the middle of the brush, like it had been there since the birth of the mountain. It looked like one of them poles that people used to use for power lines back in the 20th century and smelled sharp and acidic. On it was another plyboard sign. This time a dark-skinned woman glared at them with one eyebrow arched. Hair hung in green and blue ringlets around her face. "Danger ahead, gentlemen," it read in hand-painted blood-red letters. Kev dropped his blade and whipped his vapor rifle from his shoulder. "Snakes, Skid! Snakes!" Before Skid could stop him, the sign disappeared with only a few particles floating and dissipating in the breeze. Half the ancient pole was also missing. "Damn it, Kev, give me your weapon. You could have caught me in that fire." Skid, who'd managed to be just out of range, appeared at his fellow hunter's side. "Those snakes were moving. Didn't you see that?" Kev lowered the gun but held on to it. It was a stupid picture. Nothing moved. He grabbed the gun. "Now let me have your gun." And that's where I'm going to stop.